Askreddit by renting her penis. People who have had a stalker, how did you realize you were being stalked and what ended up happening? I had a stalker in high school, and he didn't make it a secret. We were friends at first, kind of talking romantically, but I was very shy when it came to relationships or being physical. We had never even kissed before when he asked if he could send a song he wrote about me. It made me very uncomfortable and I asked him not to send it, but he did anyway. I expressed my discomfort and tried to continue the friendship, but it was just not working because he would still write me poems and send me weird songs. He started following me to my classes even though his were on the other side of school, but he wouldn't speak to me at all. It was insanely uncomfortable. This continued for weeks. He started sending me mean messages anonymously online and sending me songs with scary titles. He sent me that Smith song "The More You Ignore Me, The Closer I Get" every single day, sometimes multiple times. Then one day at lunch he gave me a handwritten poem and I can't remember what all it said, but the end was something about how he wanted to watch me get eaten alive by sharks. While friends, I had told him sharks were my biggest fear. I showed my teacher the poem and she freaked out and took it to the guidance counselor. She knew all the previous incidents, so the letter made her worried. Especially his handwriting when he was writing about me dying. I ended up getting called into a meeting with the principal, a guidance counselor, and the teacher I told. They even called my mom and we all sat down and talked about what would be the best thing to do. The principal was really nervous he would do something crazy, so he said I should just avoid him as much as possible and be polite anytime we may interact. Basically how I was already handling it. I'm not sure if they ever spoke to him about it, but the last interaction I had with him still creeps me out to think about. I was up very late and received a text from him. "Why are you up so late? You should get ready for bed." He had been to my place once before and I lived very close to the school. I'll always wonder if he was outside my house that night. Fuck, this story just creeped me out. Had this woman who would walk into the store I worked at just to talk to me. After a while I got creeped out and started doing inventory in back whenever someone spotted her walking in. I swear she looked more like Annie Wilkes than Kathy Bates did. Used to see her standing outside the library, waiting to get in. She would be cheerful but then utter a string of F-bombs or MF-bombs if she felt slighted in any way, still with that cheerful yet dead-eyed look on her face. Man, that's unsettling. This is some underrated creepiness here. Truly ominous. I went on 3 dates with a guy but didn't quite feel like there was a connection. Tried to let him down gently, as he hadn't had a girlfriend before. I was happy to remain friends as he was a friendly guy, I just wasn't attracted to him. This was about May. I've learned a few lessons from this one. He added me on Facebook, which was okay as we'd communicate through there sometimes. A month or so goes by, and he turns up at my house unannounced, saying he was in the area. He actually lived 45 minutes away and decided to go shopping in my town. I wasn't home at the time. My brother messaged me to let me know, and then the guy messaged me too. I apologized and said I was out, won't be home for several hours. That's fine. He went home. He'd picked me up from my house for the 3rd date. A few weeks later, I had accepted an event invitation on Facebook to a car show my mechanic was hosting. The guy turned up at this car event whilst I was there with my brother and some friends, and I didn't really know what to do about it. My brother kept him entertained and I managed to exchange pleasantries but stayed with my friends. I went for lunch with my friends, and when I got home I found out that the guy had gone to my house again. This time he had left some chocolates, a towel with my name embroidered on it and a letter. In the letter he explained how he was in love with me, wanted to have children with me, get married and get a house together. Oh, and the towel was so I could think about him when I dry myself with it. Again, I turned him down, because I wasn't into him. A few months later, I'm seeing someone else and he's over at my house. This guy turns up again, unannounced, trying to get hold of me. Why didn't he just message or call me? But luckily my brother is aware I've got the new guy with me. so tells the guy I'm not home. I had to explain to him in a message that if he wants to see me he actually needs to contact me first, not just turn up unannounced and expect me to be available. It made it much more difficult to want to be friends with him as it was becoming a bit overbearing and I didn't know what he'd try next. So, I had to cut him off. He tried contacting me through several methods. He even changed his number pretending to be someone else. He finally stopped after a year and a half. You have a great brother. Used to take dance lessons. My ex was so controlling I found out he would drive past the class just after it started to see if my car was there and then would check that I went home after. If I went anywhere without clearing it with him first he would go insane. It began happening everywhere I went. He said it was to keep me safe. In reality it's because he had control issues. Once we broke up it continued. When I started dating another man he broke into the house and messed with our home to try and scare my new boyfriend off. He slashed car tires. Followed us to supermarkets. He was everywhere. Eventually my new boyfriend had to go on a street corner and the ex finally disappeared. Took a long time to not look over the shoulder. Edit. Ex went face to face on the street corner with new BF to do the whole bigger mucho gig. Your BF had to go on the street corner? I caught him jerking off in the window. Long story short my husband and I moved into our new home. Weird guy directly behind us was weird in the window. Turns out he was jerking off. Stalked online, got my number. Told me this was basically God's plan. He prayed for a beautiful woman and here I was. How my kids were gonna be his. Wild shit. Is this the outline of the next season of You? I used to hang out at a scatter park and there was always a group of girls a few grades lower that would watch all us idiot emo kids fail at simple tricks. One night it got dark before everyone left and we lived in an awful town so I offered to walk them all home. The one I dropped off last told the entire school that we slept together and she was pregnant. While that was quickly disproven she started calling me, saying she had named our children and started making weird threats. I ended up speaking with her parents as I was genuinely concerned for her health and her mental status was something her parents were aware of and said she would get help. She kind of disappeared from school after a while but the mum said she was okay, just being treated. A few years later this ridiculously hot emo girl adds me on MySpace. We hit it off and gonna hang out at the local rock bar. On the day of, I get a call from one of the other girls I walked home who I had kept in touch with. It turns out the original stalker had lost around 80 pounds during her stay in a mental health facility, where she had also broken her nose and had reconstructive surgery on it. She had created a fake MySpace under a new name. I called her mum cause again. This girl needed help, and she confessed to also having drugs with her that she was going to sedate me with. She seems healthy now, about a decade later. She's married. Her first kid has my name though. That's terrifying. But by all other accounts she's stable and we haven't had contact since that fake MySpace account. Me. Well I guess that ended okay. Sounds like she's mentally stable at least. She named her kid after me. Me. Well never mind then, that's pretty unsettling. He followed me home from church. He left long letters on my car every night for about a week. He was a lot older than me. The police spoke with him and he left town. I know how lucky I am that it was so simple. Was his name Marcelo? It started while I was still in high school. He would be in a few of my classes and we would occasionally see each other around town, a very small, rural town. It slowly turned into him showing up at some of my friend group's hangout spots and saying that I had inspired him to start looking into similar hobbies. We thought it was kinda weird but just brushed it off and avoided him. Flash forward a couple weeks into the start of summer vacation. He had found or followed me to all of my favorite places and my work, even though both were sometimes towns over from our own. I would see his car at parks where I did outdoor painting, at my place of work as well as at friends' houses, and he would drive past the house of the family I known it for during my days on. I thought it was creepy and told local authorities, but they told me not to worry. This went on for the rest of high school and up until graduation. I didn't tell anyone what university I was going to and lied claiming it was 1 hour away from mine. He was accepted and attended there while I left for another. He found out after a semester that I wasn't there and showed up at my dorm hall. He tried to break in and convince me and other people in the building to just let him in. I hid out in another girl's room until my friend was able to pick me up and take me to her boyfriend's off-campus apartment. I found out he was arrested the next morning for assaulting and rah. I called and showed them the evidence I had for his persistent stalking and finally filed a restraining order. He just got released a few months ago and I have never been more nervous. I'm just happy my current job and living area has amazing security and they all have pictures and his information to be safe. I may be paranoid, but better safe than end up on a true crime podcast. I hope you'll be okay, and that jail taught him a lesson. Someone I hadn't spoken to in years had been stalking me online, and gotten my passwords to some accounts. Share passwords of multiple accounts and she ended up impersonating me online for years without my knowledge. She catfished people with my pics on dating sites, created a fake Twitter pretending to be me, an Instagram, and even hijacked my old Reddit account. The people who found out she was using my identity told me about it, then tried to blackmail me with the information, with the pretense that they would convince authorities that it was actually me catfishing people and so on. I had to do a deep cleaning of my online presence and confront the person who had been impersonating me. It took a long time, but I got her to stop and I got the blackmailers off my back. Be careful online, kids. I worked as a secretary at an adult school when I was 18. An adult student kept bothering me, taking pictures of me outside the office, etc. I quit that job and got him banned from the school. Fast forward 3 years later, I'm in a relationship, 6 months pregnant, and I'm working at a DRS office. A police officer shows up and tells me I've had a private investigator on me for a few weeks, but he reported his client to the police because his client said he was my husband, but the PI, after following me for a few weeks, figured out he wasn't and was stalking me. He went to jail for a few days, never heard from him again. It's been 19 years. Freaky ass shit. Holy shit, I can only imagine how it dawned on the PI that the woman he was following was in fact a victim and that his client was the crazy one. I would have felt sick. I have a weird kind of related story. There is a man in my town that for the last 15 years I see him constantly. Almost everywhere I go he's there, at least 3 times a month. The grocery store, the corner store, the gas station, Walmart, the liquor store. Occasionally we catch each other's eye and look at each other like you again and kinda laugh it off. It has come to be a little bit of a joke where I will come home and tell my husband, guess who I saw at the store today. The only catch, he's always at these places first, so it's me who looks like the stalker. Edit, lots of bad grammar and words. I like this one. He wasn't subtle about it. He threatened me by phone and email, followed a moving truck to my new apartment, ignored police instructions to stop contacting me multiple times, then contacted me through other people, showed up in random places in my new city. It only stopped after he got arrested for assault on someone else and ultimately moved to a different city, where he was again arrested for assault. That last part I only know because I was regularly looking him up on court records to see if he was free. I've never had the threatening stalker, but when I was much younger I did have one of those softcore stalkers. It was the custodian in my building at work. We had a glass front door and he would lean against it while I was at the front desk. He would watch me as I walked to my car at the end of the day. He didn't ever really speak to me though. One day I entered the building in a skirt and he was on his hands and knees cleaning the baseboards, which put his head about the same level as my nethers. I passed by him in the hall, giving him as wide a berth as I could, hugging the opposite wall really, when he looks up and says something sure smells good. I bolted to my office suite and said to my boss, I feel like I need a hug and a shower. My boss, my former mentor, my now dear friend, threw his hands up when I told him what the stalker said and said, that's it. I've had it first. He tried to handle things professionally and wrote the property manager, who said that I must have been mistaken and he was complimenting my perfume, which I didn't wear because another co-worker was allergic and it was a small space. When that didn't work, he decided to patiently lie in wait. Then the next time the stalker went to look for me at the front desk, boss sits me elsewhere in the office and confronts him. He never told me what he said or how the conversation went, but the stalker quit shortly thereafter. Well, glad you had a great boss like that. Many don't care enough and react like the dude he called up did. It's terrible. A former patient. They were a bad addict and was acting out on the unit trying to get medicated. They for some reason targeted me over other staff as why they were flipping out. Well, they made a big mistake by threatening to hurt me if they didn't get benzos, because they just got discharged instead. Well, they then went into the staff parking lot and was waiting for me to get out. The police got called and they got the person to leave. Unfortunately didn't arrest them. Anyway, they kept coming around the hospital for some reason, still targeting me. They called and got my last name from the operator, which was lots of fun. They got my address somehow. At this point I had a temporary restraining order against them. They had a warrant out for something else and a cop had pulled them over for some reason. They were less than a mile from my house. They admitted they were coming to find me. Later I was contacted by police informing me of what happened and to tell me they had been arrested. They ended up in jail, not just for stalking, threatening, but armed robbery, assault, drug possession. They also killed someone while in jail, so they are probably never getting out. I really don't get why they had such a problem with me. I had interacted very little with them, and prior to them going off on me there wasn't anything negative that happened. He knew my address and did a change of address form to route it to his house. He got my social as well somehow and set up an Experian account. I called them but they said they couldn't do anything but help me get ownership of the account. He would get my mail and my Target gift cards from when they used to send them via mail for certain deals. I didn't get any of that stuff back. I changed my number 3 times, found a PO box and moved. I still randomly get someone trying to get into my Google account. This was 3.5 years ago. The postal office doesn't fuck around with mail theft. If he tries it again, contact them and he can get some hard time for it, if you're in THSS. There was this weird dude that used to call my house when I was 16. One day when my sister 13, she answered the landline and heard a man start asking her questions about who she was, name and age etc. My sister thought it was one of her friends messing around and didn't think much of it. Later that day my mum got answered the phone to the same dude asking for the girl. He proceeded to call about 50 times a day from 3 different London landlines. He never spoke to my sister after the first time but always asked for her. He was vulgar and threatening when my dad spoke to him. In the end we had to pay to have all 3 of the numbers blocked for 6 months or so. The police didn't care. If I recall, it's because he was calling from hundreds of miles away. Even though I never spoke to him, it was just so unsettling hearing the phone ring so often. I think we unplugged it a lot of the time before getting him blocked. We have no idea who he was or why he harassed us like that. I imagine maybe he just spent all day calling numbers until people answered. I've always gotten the impression that British police are so fucking lazy. Like, I've never once heard anyone commend them for doing literally anything. Are they generally this useless, or was this strange that they were this aloof here? My wife did. It became a real problem. He was a maintenance man at the school where she taught. She was throwing out a lot of old, damaged books. He asked if could have them for his kids. Of course. After that he wanted to always be there. Wherever my wife was, he was always